I think one of the hardest things to try to understand, at least right now in my life, is how you can know that you're abundant but be homeless and not have any friends and not have your children, at least the ones that haven't tried to murder you, and just feel like, okay, when is something going to actually begin manifesting that is, demonstrating that I am, quote unquote, an empress or abundant, or that I've done the work, I've done the healing work, and I am balanced, even though I'm crying right this minute. It takes a lot for me to cry. I don't cry easy. And it's not because I'm hardened either. I have built up a lot of resiliency and reclaimed, like, my personal power. I can remember being in the marriage, being stuck, and, crying a lot, and it not taking, I would say in a way, it not taking a lot, but really it was because it was all just a lot. It was so much, and I didn't know anything back then about mental manipulation and energy harvesting, but pretty sure that my soon-to-be ex was him, and my extended family were doing even things like conjuring up, spirits and trying to, like, send me death magic. And I understand those things just enough to speak on them, but not real in depth, because it's nothing that I've ever sought to do to anybody. And as much as even some of my children have tried to demonize me because I'm spiritual but not a Christian, the truth is the Christians that were in my life for so many years, like the Mennonites and many Baptists, are actually the ones who are warlocks and witches, dark ones, if there is such a thing. I know there's supposed to be good witches, but I guess there's supposedly good warlocks, but I'm neither good or bad warlock or witch, because I'm not any of that. I'm just naturally magical and have a big energy that I was born with, that's been harvested since I was just months old. And so today is September 26th, and I was supposed to be out checking out of this hotel yesterday morning, and the only reason I wasn't kicked out or whatever was because a man who was rooming 2 doors down told the manager to not kick me out and that he was going to pay for me for a week. I've been paying by the week here for probably at least 2 months, and my money's all run out. And the same day, and really in the same 5 minutes that this man was telling the manager of the hotel I was right there. He had just gotten off work from, like, working a 12-hour shift. It's not somebody that I even really know. I only know his first name, but he had gotten word that he's a contractor type of person working out of state, and so wherever he's from, his mom had taken ill and I think was in a coma or unconscious, or just really bad off, and I'm pretty sure he was in his 50s, and so his mom's probably elderly, and so anyway, he was like having to leave right away to go and drive like however many 15 or more hours to wherever state he's from. And so he didn't ever call up here. He told the manager he would call like by the next day and kind of, I guess, pay over the phone or whatever, and that didn't happen. And I didn't have his number, and so today I asked like 3 times yesterday. I'm like, so I asked, the manager and then the manager's son, have you heard or what's going on? Because it kind of feels like the best thing that came to mind for me was like, imagine if you know you're going to be taking like an airplane flight, but you don't know when it leaves. Like you got all your stuff ready to go and you're preparing yourself. Even though the airplane ride would be a lot better than trying to live on the streets, but I had packed as much as was practical, leaving some things out to use, and I've been washing my clothes by hand and stuff, and I have, very minimum things to eat. I don't have cars, so all my food's been Amazon. It's still Prime, but it won't be much longer. But, and I've been thankful for that. But, so this man never called, and I was definitely supposed to have been out yesterday, so I knew today I would have to leave. So I was, getting rid of things and cleaning up my room more and just preparing myself once again and really getting to where I'm okay, and I don't know what the hell's gonna happen, but then these guys in the room next to me on the other side, they knew the other guy, but they ended up paying for a week. But I had thrown away some things I wouldn't have thrown away if I'd known. Like I threw away my notebook with probably at least 100 poems. But it was like such a big, oversized notebook that I was like, it's just impractical. So I ripped the rest of the pages out and put those in a backpack, kind of rolled up to take up less room, and and I'm real thankful, of course, that they did that. But it was almost like, I'm not complaining, but I'm just saying it's just like that mental shift. Okay, and so now how it feels like to like try to live out of an overstuffed backpack or suitcase. It's not really a suitcase, but it's like, okay, where is everything? I don't know where anything is. But I'm thankful. So of course it would have been nicer if I hadn't thrown away those last few things. And I've been using 2 disposable forks for the last 2 months, and I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, I had ordered some ramen noodles that came in a black, rectangle container. I don't usually eat stuff like that, but that became my dish. And just real, I think it was the same guys, they'd asked me a couple weeks ago, what are you eating over there? What's that jar? And it was like, well, coconut oil came in this, and once that was gone, this became my travel mug for some broth and stuff that I was making, miso, basically miso soup. And a lot of this gets you thinking about, how many times have I, especially living in Virginia Beach, how many times have I even scoffed inwardly, not to them, but I know there's been many times where I've thought the homeless people, often it's the same person. I did buy him Chick-fil-A once, but then I got to see that he was there every day, and I'm like, I think this guy's working this corner, and I almost came to doubt he was homeless. And I don't know, you never know, but being on this side really just makes you think about it differently. And I didn't want to ask these guys to do anything for me. The only reason I was going to accept the other guy whose mom is sick, his offers, because it was strictly his idea. And of course I don't want to be on the streets. And honestly, I feel like with all the corruption and everything that it's been, that I feel almost like the police are ready to arrest me over some bogus charges again, as soon as I would basically step foot off of the premise of this hotel. Because at this point, what could they even try to say that I'm doing? I'm not doing anything wrong, but that's kind of what I've almost been intuitively feeling / worrying about a little bit. I'm trying not to overly worry about it, but the police had rolled by at the hotel. And, I know that they do their, what do you call it, patrolling and stuff, but, I couldn't help but think, yeah, pretty sure they know who I am. Pretty sure, this whole, scandal that isn't out there in the media yet, it's still very well known by, I'm basically just one town over. I'm just about, I don't know, 40 minutes or something over from where my unfortunately still spouse and my kids live and stuff. And I haven't told any of them where I am, but then I've called around for so many different both homeless and domestic women leaving domestic abuse, those kind of shelters, and left my number and name and stating what area I'm in. And I just feel like there's no way that people don't know where I am. Even if my ex doesn't know where I am, I feel like overall my whereabouts is certainly known. But I'm not concerned for, I know that they can't kill me. I know I've broken through the matrix completely. And to break through the matrix is not the same as to realize that there is a matrix and that there is something, kind of like a big old sham. And, I've known all kinds of things in that regard for, well over 15 years. But I did break out of the matrix. And it's almost like gaining immortality. I know that there isn't anybody on this earth that can take my life. I am so heavily protected. I know that without a shadow of doubt. I did not know that, and I had not yet broken out the matrix when I was in prison unjustly from February until June of this year. And so, I don't know. I've thought about, is it that someone who was supposed to do something didn't listen to their intuition and didn't listen to, if you want to say, the guidance of the universe. And so because they didn't do their part, there's a certain person's name I could intercept there, but I will refrain from doing so just because this certain person did not, however you want to say it, take the initiative to do what they were supposed to do. And they were supposed to be in my life, and they were supposed to be, bringing me an offer. And I don't mean here's some money, I mean more like offering themselves, as far as a relationship or love and those kind of things. And so it's well, is it all of those kind of outward, and not even just one person, but just, So I'm in this hotel for another week, and I think it includes yesterday, so not quite a week, but so I went around to the places in walking distance today that I've already applied to, and tried again to touch base with the hiring manager. And there's a restaurant just really probably 200 yards from the hotel that is a very small, one-of-a-kind restaurant, which would be ideal. It's very very, very close. And with me not having a car, the other one is more of a travel rest stop, and it would be more there's a huddle house there. I was trying to apply for the cook position, but it's more, I have to kind of cross, just a busy road, but not anything undoable. But it's a little bit more of hazard to if I think about if I was walking there in some midnight or something after working late, it would be a little bit more dangerous. But this lady who owns the restaurant close to here, she's just, I read energy, I can tell she's not interested, but she's like, oh, well, I'm still reviewing, I've got your number. And it's she won't even take 2, 3 minutes, 5 minutes to speak with me. I mean, she's not being rude per se, but because I can really feel into what she really, she's not interested. It's very much what I can tell. And at the Huddle House, they currently are closing every every day at 2 because whoever their cook is can't, the cook for the daytime isn't available, I guess, after that time. So they really need a cook or multiple cooks. And I have a lot of experience cooking, but it's not in a commercial setting, obviously. And I've applied and I've spoken with the manager once, but went up there 3 times today. And it's, it's only like 7 minutes up the road, but he kept not being back yet. I was told he would be back in an hour, and it went back in like an hour, 20 minutes, and he still wasn't there. And after the 3rd time, I just kind of left another verbal message for him. And then these guys that pay for my room, just like the guy who had to go to whatever state because his mom is ill, like they are do contracting work for solar panel places, whatever. I want to say a farm, I don't know what you call it. And they're like operate machinery and stuff, but they're saying they're gonna try to help me. They've been saying it for over a week that they're gonna try to help me get a job. And I did call the number that one of them had given me for the union, the laborers union, yesterday, but he said there were not any labor positions. Of course, if I knew how to run like a backhoe or some machinery, there's positions for this kind of, but those jobs, if I could get an entry-level labor. I did get my OSHA 10 certificate recently, and last week, but the pay would be like maybe like $22 an hour, and you got 10-hour days, and then there might even be per diem and stuff for housing. So that would be physically exhausting as far as just how long the day and then being in the elements and stuff, but it would probably pay quite a bit better than the Huddle House, even though right now they're offering some kind of bonus for cooks because they're so desperate to be able to have their store open the other like half of the day that they could. So part of me could see doing that, but I'm just rambling now, I guess. It's just like, I don't leave comments too much on anything like on YouTube and stuff, but I have a couple months ago left a comment because it was relevant to the read, and I did feel like the read fit my situation, but I commented that I was abundant and homeless, and someone like put like haha, like get real kind of thing, and it is kind of just, it's the mental thing of realizing that okay, I've done the work, and it's like high time for the manifestations for what I actually am, what I'm due, with how balanced I am and everything. And really it's that, my ex and so many people have been feeding off me for so long and doing all this witchcraft to continue even after I've done all this healing work, and they're still sending me stuff, death spells and all kinds of stuff. And even though I've been alchemizing it, and it is not, and I'm so highly protected, it isn't killing me, obviously. And my writing has been probably the number one way that I've been alchemizing for, quite some time now, more than a year. But it's like there's still not the, like the restitution of what I'm due. And I just think, okay, it's like, oh, I have more lessons, what do I need to, what do I need? What is this? I already actually have quite a few specific downloads of what's to come, but I guess I thought it was going to have already come by now. Not maybe everything in its entirety, but there was a certain tarot reading that really, it used, my kids don't have normal names because I'm a Jennifer, It had Jaleesa, that's my oldest daughter, had her name specifically called out. It had my oldest son, Dante, his name. It had a name that they said was something like Lala or Lele. And Lele is what my third son, that was his nickname when he was young. I don't think anybody calls him that now, but his name is Layden, and he goes by he went by Lele for, years. And so there were so many specific things to that read, and that was the day that I really got clued in that people were after me. And it was probably the day before or 2 days before I ended up, fleeing to the hotel and there being gunshots and people truly attempting to kill me. So with that message, I've tried to go back and find it on my watch history, but I remember there being October 4th being a date given. Of course, it didn't give the year. So now I've said to Spirit, okay, so what is it, next year? Several years away on October 4th, but we're so close to October 4th now that I just hardly have the ability to keep believing that it will be October 4th of this year. But it was talking about, this was shortly after I'd had the vision, the real-time kind of vision of the Mennonites beheading someone as a sacrifice, and outside in the woods. So October 4th in this certain tarot reading was that the swamps will be drained, and wherever this has taken place, which I believe is probably somewhere close to the Mennonite church in Severn, North Carolina, but I believe there's quite a number of remains of dead bodies in the surrounding swamps. I believe that spirits definitely told me that. And I think I have some ability I haven't really tried to what do you call it? Where you can see, but I have kind of seen, I don't really know exactly where it is, but it's I have seen, almost seeing in my third eye, kind of scenes that are, So, back when I was arrested, I felt okay, it was February 12th or something like that, 14th or something. I felt okay, I just need to make it through, winter, and then make it through the summer, and come October, this stuff is going public, it's gonna be a big shakedown, and now it's like I said, it's September 26th of 2025, and it's okay, well, October 4th will be just days away, and I just don't really have the faith to believe that's gonna happen, at least on that timetable. I do believe it's going to happen. I do believe I've certainly been shown, without a doubt, I am gonna get justice, but it's more when the hell is any of this stuff gonna ever come to the surface? I know there's a lot of people working in using, dark magic and stuff. We're talking just so many people, the kind of people that have been up against me, the amount of people. I mean, I know it's well over 1,000, but it's probably many thousands, because even just to think of, it's the Mormons too, but if we just even said it was just Mennonites, I have personally been acquainted with a number of Mennonite, at least 3 churches that were within, driving distance that I spent years at. And so, but it's not it just stops with them. And then the fact that they're actually really vampires and sacrificing humans, and that I know about it because, the divine gave me real-time visions. this stuff is coming out. And that's why, they've continued to try to want to kill me and stuff, but they can't because I broke through the matrix. And I don't understand it fully, but I just know that whoever the top elites, whoever, they are even limited in what they can do. And there was a thing that came out. I think it was printed in the USA Today, but I get Spirit added to my phone. I have not been someone who keeps up with the news because I know it's a bunch of shit. But the way I knew I had broken out the Matrix was because of the ocean gates. It was like a code. It was a bunch of coding. And there was my age. Ocean, of course, is my name that I have given myself. And basically, it gave the details of how many, attempts against me, and referred to me as a Titan. And I had to look up that word because even though I was somewhat familiar with what Titan means, I knew that, you think of war, like old time and stuff, but basically it was like this coded news article that's supposedly about people taking a voyage to the deep parts of the ocean and people, dying on this certain vessel. But the coding, the secret message, the message that was able to be decoded by me, even went so far to say that Tracy would be basically feeding off of our 9-year-old as he continues to molest him, because he can't feed off of me anymore, which, let me tell you, that's not okay with me. One of the hardest things I've had to do is detach somewhat from the fact that I cannot protect my children. And that's why, in the end, not only is all this stuff going to come out, but laws will be rewritten. Like, there will be real change, however that's going to look. Because the presidents and, there's so much bullshit. Forget political parties right and left. Like, it's all just a mirage. The countries are very much solidified together. And, it's really just a lot of tyranny. But even in the flawed and corrupt system, Spirit has revealed to me that even if it takes, spiritual beings, quote, body jumping into existing humans that are already, alive, and let's say a middle-aged judge or something, like one of my spirit guides, if needed, will jump into the body of a judge to get some shit done, because my justice is coming. Like, it's supposed to be here. So that's the hardest part right now, is just kind of looking at it like, yeah, well, I believe it, but apparently the October 4th date was not for this year. But the swamps will be drained, I believe. And it will be known all of the things that I have had to single-handedly, at least as far as humans go, be up against. Literally hunted. And it's not going to be for nothing. It's not going to be even just for me to be like, receive some kind of acclaim. It's going to be so that actual change happens, so that these kind of things don't keep happening to people. It isn't just me that it's happened to. Just like I'm not the only infant or the only person who from infancy had been sold into sex trafficking for, quote, satanic ritual abuse. Even though satanic or Satan is just a archetype, really. It's not, it's not the way Christianity. And these are Christians, So it's very complex, and it's going to be disturbing when all of this does come out, because to find out, like, that the Mormons and the Mennonites and lots of Baptists and lots of Christian churches are actually, like, sacrificing humans and drinking blood. Here, take, eat. This is my body. It's all kind of sickening, ironic. It's going to be very disturbing for the public. But it is. I know that it is. It is coming out. And, I have already won. I've already conquered my enemies. I've already brought them down. Let's say the Mormons and the Mennonites, Church of Christ, the Baptists, at least that I've known. And there's so many people who aren't necessarily Christians that are part of these, societies, secret societies, and part of this. So yeah, I can just think about, it's because this person didn't fill their role, or what's the hold up? Kind of, that's what it feels like. And then you think divine timing, and that there's not really a hold up, and it's all going the way it's supposed to. And I think for me, one of the harder things is continuing to believe in something when you can't see, which of course is what faith is, right? But then all those years that I had so much faith and really shouldn't have, and I really should have given up hoping in certain things, almost like beating a dead horse. It's like, if I hadn't hoped and had faith for to win the last husband to Christ and that kind of thing, I would have left when I thought I was supposed to. But instead I kind of kept listening to church leaders and what the Bible said, and kept suffering daily. And it's kind of funny, the restaurant where the lady, I can tell, doesn't want to have anything to do with me. She had asked when I first went in there, before I applied, which was, probably a week ago, she mentioned my piercings and asked would I be willing to take them out, or did they mean something to me. And then today when I was in there, I saw a Romans 9 and 10 scripture thing in a frame, and I was like, okay. And I was kind of thinking how, I'm not assuming that she's a vampire kind of person, but it's like, yeah, it really is. It does seem to be that the Christians are just so often so overly judgmental and not. And I mean, I was that way. But I have told her I'm technically homeless and I really need a job, and I just almost feel like it's probably just too much, and if I had a house and I was a normal person with a car, and and I didn't tell her, I haven't told her half of all the crazy I'm dealing with, but and then another thing that's been really hurting me trying to get work, I failed the background check for a FedEx. I was trying to become a FedEx driver. Is this misdemeanor from when I was being gang stalked, and when I used the furniture to try to barricade my suite that I paid for in Virginia Beach and all. And so they have this, they threatened me when I wanted to ask for an extenuation of the court date back, in February, because I wanted to get the surveillance footage to prove that I really was being stalked, and this is the reason that I did this with the furniture, because they arrested me and stuff. And it's so what happened with the court, I was in jail and I was going to court, with in shackles. But I was told by my court-appointed lawyer, who was never for me, that if I didn't move forward with the court, with the thing, whatever it's called, that day, that on the other side, the police, that they were going to raise it to, first he told me they were going to raise it to a felony. It ended up that they couldn't, quote, raise it to a felony because it would have needed to be in a different court, a different kind of court. I think it was in district court. And so they raised it by it's still being misdemeanor, but it's literally says, like when they do the background check for FedEx, like it literally says destruction of property over $1,000. So it's really hurting me to try to find work with this like tarnished record. You know, I just had my birthday the other day and I just turned 47, but prior to this, you know, me being stalked in February, but prior to this, you know, which I wasn't found guilty till June because I was kept trying to get the surveillance footage and that was never able to be gotten for me. But it's like, you know, I don't have a car, he's not giving me any money, and then this background, you know, even though it's not a felony, it's hurting me almost like it's a felony. And yet, as unjust as it all is, I know that eventually, like, I'm going to receive my justice, and it's all going to be worth it. It's all going to be okay. You know, monetarily, I'm going to be reimbursed heavily. Then there's a slightly cynical part of me that's like, oh yeah, how are they going to make it right that my own children and their dad murdered my son when he was 18 months, my son Ethan, who would now be approximately 12. You know, like, there's some things that just can't really be made right. And another thing currently I'm dealing with is the there's not a shelter here in this area that I'm in, but there's a domestic violence and sexual assault unit. It's called a unit, and they paid for like 3 nights for a hotel, and they bought me a coat because I had turned cold and now it's gotten hot again. This is going back 2 weeks ago or so, when I originally thought I was going to have to be out of the hotel. And now, you know, that lady, she won't even respond. I mean, she's employed, this is her job. She won't even respond to my emails or my texts. I asked her, you know, will they please pay the $60 fee for me to take the OSHA, get my OSHA 10 certification so I could get one of these labor positions through the solar panel farm, or whatever you call it. And she's just never, she doesn't respond. She used to respond. And actually the last time she came up here to the hotel, she surprised me because I thought I had her pegged, and I think I was reading her energy quite accurately. But then she had me second guessing myself because she came up here and she said, we're gonna go ahead and pay for another 3 nights. So that was like extended, you know, me out when I thought I was going to be on the street the next day. And she's like, we don't want you to think we don't care. And I had already felt like that. And you know, I wrote her a long email just yesterday and respectfully, you know, asked, like, could you please tell me if you just are choosing that you're not going to have any more dealings with me because I keep, you know, contacting you, and I don't like to assume things, and I know that you have other people that you work with, and, you know, I'm not expecting you to, like, call me back at the drop of a dime. But when it's been, you know, a week and you don't hear back, and this is her job, then it's like, well, I guess she could be out sick or something. But it's been long enough, I don't really think that's the case. And it's, you know, kind of said, I don't know why you came up here and paid the 3 more nights. I don't know why you said to me, quote unquote, we don't want you to think that we don't care. That my gut instinct is coming to that conclusion, but I don't want to assume, so I'm going to ask you outright, and I expect a courteous response, and at least let me know, because she's the only person I'm putting down as a contact on all these job applications. And it's like, you know, is she possibly sabotaging me? And she's someone who's from, you know, born and raised in this little tiny town, and I know that a lot of these people who are business owners and stuff, not necessarily all of them, but a lot of them are part of these, you know, organized crime kind of, really is like dealing with the mafia, cartel, whatever you want to call it. Secret societies, cults and covens. It really is. It's all kind of interwoven, and so it's like I feel like in a way that there's a lot of obstacles for me finding employment, because it's almost like, even though I broke out of the matrix because I need money practically, it's like part of me doesn't even feel like I'm supposed to even get a job, because it's like you're already broken out of the matrix and you're meant for advocacy work, you're meant for things that are bigger and better than like, frying up some burgers or whatever, but I'm not above anything, but it's like just kind of things not really matching what I know I'm supposed to be getting, and wondering when in the world's ever gonna come. And not only for me receiving, but also for all of these people who made themselves my enemies, because I didn't seek out for anybody to be my enemy. And I actually would have thought I didn't have any enemies several years ago, but I was naive. But for them to be getting their, what they're due, and people who have like my soon-to-be ex-husband, who have, we're talking about some super dark stuff. My parents sold me into sex trafficking and let all kinds of people molest me since infancy, including themselves. And my husband of 28 years, until I left him 3 years ago, was multiple times a week committing marital rape, which I didn't believe in, so, I submitted. And even through tears and all of that, it's just, but that's not the half of it. We're talking about these people do things like summoning dark entities to attach to me, trying to attach to me. They no longer can. Like the level of darkness, like the level of, I didn't even know there was such evil in the world. And some of these things are really boasted about, I actually have never really been one to read fiction until I was in jail, and like there was nothing. There was one law book that I read over and over again. Pretty much it's just a bunch of, fiction. And I ended up reading probably 1.5 vampire novels, but there was this one vampire novel, and really a lot of things kept kind of strikingly standing out to me, which I feel like they were downloads I was getting as I was reading the book. But it's quite boastful of kind of like the pleasure being greater than sex and greater than drugs, greater than being under the influence of alcohol, is the pleasure supposedly of, like, in the book it was more like someone like drinking the blood from someone's neck kind of thing, and it was supposedly like very erotically satisfying to the person whose neck was being drunk from. But now I know, like, what's really going on is not sinking teeth in and drinking like that. It's actually like people actually being killed and blood being drinking, and actually bodies being these people are having sex with the dead that they sacrifice, and then they drink the blood, and they even eat, I'm not saying they eat the whole entire body, but they eat. And it really does make those verses in the Bible of, here, drink my blood and eat of my flesh. If you drink not the blood and eat not of my flesh, you have no life in you. And it's like, it is really crazy to think about how true it is, and how they are truly drinking the lifeblood, or, the life is in the blood, right? And all the hymns and stuff, and it really is, when you realize what Christianity really is, and what it hides under, and what it's hiding. It's such a paradigm shift. And I already wasn't a Christian when I came to realize this stuff, but it's like, I believed this stuff from the Christian side. I believed it for a solid, 24 years, 25 years. Like, it's such a paradigm shift. And if I hadn't had that vision that was in real time, I never would have come to to these conclusions. I never would have thought anybody had killed Ethan, you know? I mean, I'm the one who found him, and I'm the one that what do you call it? The people who examine the dead body, like a detective kind of person had to come over, and I had to use a baby doll and kind of show how I had found him. And, they did the autopsy and supposedly found that it was natural causes, which I believe that's all just, it goes deep. The people who were involved, including like the Mormon-owned funeral home in Franklin, it's just a few miles from where the marital house is. These are really corrupt people who have positions to be able to, falsify the medical findings and, hide murder and consume bodies even after they're buried. This is what's going on. So I'm just kind of looking at this from knowing I do know what's going to happen, but I don't know when, and it's taking longer than I would have believed. And that's that. And one more thing that just came to mind that I wanted to actually record several days ago, but hadn't yet, is, I found out a few days ago, as I was recalling a large amount of numbers for different shelters that are all full still, is one lady mentioned she was giving me some different numbers that I didn't have yet. Ended up not turning into anything, but she kind of said half a sentence and she didn't finish, and then I kind of called her out and asked her to, complete what I thought she was saying, and she affirmed what I had kind of picked up, what she was meaning. Basically, I don't know if she wasn't supposed to tell me, but she basically told me that she was giving me some numbers for some homeless shelters, and not to mention the domestic abuse, or it automatically disqualifies me from getting help from a homeless shelter. And that's definitely something I didn't know, because I have been dealing with both kinds of shelters that I've been calling, and I had stayed at a homeless shelter for 1 month, because that's as long as I could stay there. Going back a couple months ago, 3 months ago is when I started staying there, but approximately. But I didn't know that, and so I think of how many times did I just not fit the criteria. And then what I was finding out also that day, not from the conversation with the lady, but from just being on the phone with the different domestic abuse shelters, they were asking me, they don't really want to give, none of these places want to give you answers. You call and you ask if they have housing, availability, but they want to ask you a bunch of things, very personal things, before they give you any information, even if they're full. But the thing is they're trying to see if you even meet the criteria that you would need to meet. And so they want to know the domestic violence shelters that I would have talked to again. These are places I have called for months, and, they continue to be full. But see, I have not been living at home, and I have not been, in close proximity to the husband. So he has not had, he has not had me around. Plus I was in jail, and I did go home the one night, even though I didn't want to. But when before all that happened, before I realized how bad and how crazy things were, when we used to switch off for the kids, I would just make sure that I wasn't hanging around him. I was pretty much beelining to So they're asking me things like, well, okay, so there was sexual violence. So when's the last time that basically that kind of thing happened? And I would have to say, well, that would have been approximately 3 years ago. Well, with one of the phone calls, I kind of answered it a little differently, and I wasn't trying to lie, but, she said, well, when did you leave? And I said 3 months ago, because that's true, because I had gone home for one night. Didn't mention jail, didn't mention, and even 3 months ago, when it really has been more like 3 years since there's been any sexual violence. But see, the thing is I'm still being abused. I'm still being manipulated. There's financial abuse. There's all kinds of abuse still. But that lady on that phone conversation had specifically asked, when did you leave? So I said 3 months, and that 3 months is too long. They are only trying to help people who are in, as she said, in a case where they're actually, fleeing. And I'm like, well, like, it's, I don't know if you understand what I mean, but basically, it's like a catch-22. It's like, oh, so I would be better off to go back and, let him have his way with me a little bit more, and then it would be fresher, and then I could maybe get into your program. You see what I mean? And so it was kind of like the same day, just a few days ago, that I was coming to really understand more fully that, okay, you're already, because you haven't been raped by him, in 3 years, right? You don't, even if it had been 3 months, you don't qualify any longer to get into these domestic violence shelters. And like I said with the one other lady mentioning, if I call a homeless shelter, don't mention domestic violence or it disqualifies me automatically. So, and I'm not somebody who likes to lie, but it's like, these are the kind of things that I feel like I'm supposed to be used to actually bring about some real change. Because if anybody qualifies, if anyone's been abused and is continuing to be abused, it's just like financial and all these other ways that we don't think of, it's not punched. There needs to be redefining. There needs to be, and even like I said, this other lady working at the domestic violence unit in this area, and they don't want to help me. It's like, basically, these places, even some of the ones that are not helping me at all because I don't qualify, some of them only at the most offer up to 3 days at like a hotel. That is the hope that they give. Other places only offer a month, which is really not enough time for someone who's truly leaving like their whole living situation, especially if they have their kids with them, to get a job and get on their feet and get to where they can be self-sufficient. And then some of the places have more like a 3-month or a 6-month program. If you get into the month-long one, then you have a chance of there becoming an opening for the more long-term. But a lot of these places only have 3 days. And the lady I ended up talking to in one of these conversations the other day was way more, just way more kind and empathetic. She even said, I see you, I can't help. But she said, but I see you. And I could feel it. She really did. She saw me, and she was a survivor herself. But she was telling me that I don't fit the criteria, and she hated that I didn't. But she wanted me to know that, like, all they can offer, if someone even would meet the criteria, is not probably what I'm thinking. And it was only at the most 3 days of being put up in a hotel. So, like, when people out there who come from solid homes and don't have, all this bullshit, when people give their money to these different organizations, these shelters, whether they're homeless or domestic violence, I don't think that people would only think, if someone's leaving a truly abusive marriage or relationship, that, like, I'm gonna give however much money people give, whether it's 20 or thousands or whatever, anything in between, whatever it would be, the person is probably not thinking that, like, the victim isn't really going to receive enough help to leave. And that's why the rate is so high that these ladies go back. Like, even for myself right now, it's like a miracle that I am even under a roof and not on the street. I don't have money coming in. I don't have a car. Thank God I got on food stamps when I started 3 months ago, when I started staying at that one homeless shelter for a month. It's not enough support to really help to, like, rehabilitate from, like, even the financial aspect of. And I just think to myself, if I hadn't done all of this mental kind of, like, going inward and all of this, balancing out like the emotional side, like there isn't anything. There just isn't anything. And then some of these places could offer me, I don't want it, but they could offer me counseling. But you can't, this is what they have available. Some of the domestic violence shelters, they have a counselor of some sort available. And if you have Medicaid, they're still gonna like charge you. But I don't have Medicaid. But can you imagine offering someone counseling, but you can't offer them a roof? Like, in other words, someone could come in, someone who's a domestic violence survivor, who's left, and let's imagine they even have some kids with them. Like, that would be crazy. Their shelters are all full, ma'am, but hey, would you like to set up an appointment next Tuesday to come in and speak, for an hour or for 30 minutes with one of our counselors? And it's like, it doesn't make sense. And I don't know how many times I've had to tell people, like, no, I don't have my children with me. And I almost feel like I have to say in the next breath, and I would hate to see if I did, because like I can't even get into anywhere just by myself. Even to imagine having my children possibly facing being on the streets, even though I hate to know, I know that 2 of them are being sexually molested. It's been revealed to me. And one was confirmed in the coded article. It's entitled Ocean's Gate, which is code for Ocean, aka Jennifer Henderson, broke through the Matrix. And it had at the time, because I just turned 47, it had 4633, 4633, all in like, it was way coded. But like, I know that my children who are being molested are my 9-year-old son. No, he's 10 now. Micah. And I believe my youngest son, who's 6, Yuri. And I believe my 8-year-old, he's an earth angel, or heavily spiritually gifted like me, like I have been since I was a child. It was like he couldn't be, even though I was. So I don't know. I feel like I have some intuition on that, though, that he couldn't be. I don't mean to say this in any negative about my children who are being molested, but I just feel like it was tried, and he is just too aware, and it wasn't gotten to early enough in that regard, like I was. But I absolutely hate that I can't protect my children, and these are the kind of things that are gonna come out, and these are the kind of things that are gonna, my situation's going to mean that someone else can protect their children, because this is so crazy, and the things that have been done to me and my kids. I mean, some of my kids have turned completely into the evil that their dad is, but it's such a crazy, like, with my poetry, like, I know I at least referred to in one of my poems, like, the reality that's been my reality, which is not known publicly yet, and I don't know all of the details yet. I just have a good overall understanding, but it wouldn't make the cut for any kind of fiction novel. It would be like, any editors would be like, oh no, that is ridiculous. Like, we want our fiction novels to at least be realistic. But yet it is the reality. And something really needs to change as far as support for victims. Something really needs to change. And the protective parent be seen not vilified and demonized. See, has so much projection. Everything that I am in integrity and honor, honesty, you know, everything that I am, he's been trying to cloak himself in for decades. And everything that he truly is, corrupt, mentally unstable, everything he truly is, he's been trying to cast upon me and project onto me and get everyone, you know, whether it's the people I knew and that he knew in person, or whether it's just overall anybody, to just see me the way that it's actually him. And this is what they do. And this is the whole thing of the, you know, the energy work. And when you are sleeping with someone, they are aware of this kind of thing, and you're not, you know, they are siphoning your sacral or sexual creative energy and cloaking themselves in you as a garment, basically, and to your deterioration, and then trying to, like, you know, summon stuff like entities, evil attachments, and attach that stuff to me. And before I had done the healing work, it was able to at least attach to me somewhat and affect me. And that's why I was having all these like panic attacks and anxiety, and where I like had to pull off the road and could not, like, you know, would drive out an hour to go do some errands because we lived in the country. And I remember just almost like shaking, and there were big ditches, and if it was raining, I just couldn't. And then I called Tracy once and I was like, can you come and get me, because I just am like terrified of these ditches with this rain. And he said no. And then once I broke down at a thrift store in Virginia Beach, and it wasn't raining or anything, but I called him and said, you know, can you, I wasn't having such anxiety then, but, you know, just another example of kind of what I was dealing with. You know, I broke down, you know, can you come? He's like, no, I don't feel like driving out that way. Why don't you call your dad? You know? And who I had no relationship with. And then I did call my dad. I didn't want to, but I did. And my dad said, no, I'm not driving out there. My dad had a half an hour. Tracy would have had like an hour to get to me. Neither of them did. I mean, that at the time brought me emotionally to, like, I was crying like so hard, because it was like all the abandonment wounds are just like freshly being stirred. But okay, I just wanted to add that part on there about the shelters and stuff, because there's a false, you know, there's a front that, oh, we have all these shelters, we have all these things in place for victims, and we, you know, and then all these people, you know, they make their money, like that's they're employed, and they have annual salaries, and, you know, but it's like, I'm not saying they don't help anybody, but they don't help enough. They're not helping enough, and many people like myself are being turned down, and the thing hasn't happened yet. It was supposed to happen yesterday, but, and then before, it was supposed to happen 2 weeks before that, but the thing is that, you know, imagine feeling like, okay, so like I either can go back to him, and actually he wants to kill me. So it's like, you can return to abuse, or you are homeless and going to be on the streets, where you are then subjected to, you know, other people raping you possibly, right? But like, I'm highly protected, and I'm kind of in a different situation with that now, but like, just overall, like, it's not what people think, and it's not what I would have even thought when it comes to like the homeless who are standing there with their homemade sign. And, you know, sometimes like in Norfolk, there's even signs posted, please don't, you know, basically don't give money to the forget the way they word it, but, you know, panhandlers, right? And that, you know, they mention like the United Way, and there are shelters, there are things to help them. I actually called the United Way. I actually called some of the same ones that are like where the signage is posted in Norfolk, and I thought to myself, they don't tell you this side. They don't tell you that there is nothing. There's nothing available. You know, they make it seem like, okay, don't do this because, it's kind of like, bringing down our city, and we don't want to like encourage these people to, they're not saying all of that on the sign, but that's pretty much what they're getting at. Let's not do this because there are things in place to help those people, but there's not. Or if there is, I'm not saying they don't exist at all, but if there is, the percentage of people that they can help versus how many aren't being helped. This is why, the way I perceived like the certain same guy in Virginia Beach, always in the same corner, and I felt like he was working the corner, not like he was being a prostitute, but like he's working the corner like the way a prostitute would. Like it's his little corner. It's his, and I would think to myself like, is he homeless? I'm not sure. Is it just a way of scamming for money? But there isn't real help. There's not. And what's a month? What the hell is 3 days when you're being displaced from everything that you know to get out of an abusive situation? But even a month. And then so the more long-term, the 3-month stay or the 6-month is for, such an even smaller percentage. And most people are returning. I think that people need to be aware, be made aware, and I hope that my story will be used in a massive way, like worldwide, to bring attention, not because I'm so special, even though I have been through a lot. Also, I have never been punched, and that needs to be redefined. What constitutes abuse? And then when you think about the corruption in the churches and how it's the Christian teaching of submission and of dying daily and all of those things together, it is a concoction of evil and abuse. Like me standing in my power and saying, no, you will not do that to me. And even when I stayed at the one homeless shelter, there was a lady who worked there. She volunteered there. She didn't like that when she would say certain things to me that I had something else to say, and I wasn't being rude to her. But she once said to me that I say this to you and then you always say something back. And I was just thinking about that yesterday, and almost like I wish I could go back to that conversation and say, oh, I see. So when you say something to me, you want me just to receive what you say and to submit to it, basically. That's basically what it comes down to. And yet me standing in my power and finally saying no more, with all the churches, with all the people I knew, everyone trying to say, get back under him, get back in the home, get back in the marriage, get back under, get right with God, you're worshiping demons. And my 14 or 15-year-old son the other week on the phone saying, pretty much trying to say I'm worshiping the devil. And I try to explain spiritual abuse and manipulation. And he was like, I know you're going to think about this tonight when you lay in bed. Think about that I'm right and how you've turned away from God. So that's why that's why you're homeless. That's why you're this. And it's like, I tried to explain to him, like, on one hand, I can understand why you think some of the things you do, because I used to be very narrow-minded because of what the Bible actually says. And because I was so sincere with believing the way I believed. But then there comes a point where it's like, you're being spiritually abusive as you say these things to me. And part of me was able to realize that day, that's my son Uriah, that he also is part of this kind of like vampiric energy harvesting. I'm not sure if he's full and well in it like my older 3. Because to enter it, you have to rape someone and/or / molest, which is the same thing. Anyway, I think I'm done.